Justin, I mean, you're a professional MMA fighter, but really, I mean, you're so much more than that. You're an incredible humanitarian. Right now, the most timely issue that you're really the tip of the spear on is this anti-bullying movement and standing with Raiden,
Yeah.
who's a young man in high school.
Actually, he's 12. He's a big boy, though.
Yeah, he's
a big
12
boy,
years
7th
old. Maybe before we jump into that, why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey to starting Fight for the Forgotten?
Sure.
And, yeah, let's just start there, man.
Okay. First, just so grateful for both of you guys having me on.
Thank you.
This is awesome. Thank you. Fighting, for me, was something I found after getting relentlessly bullied growing up. I think a lot of martial artists, MMA fighters, grew up being bullied, not being the bully. And so found martial arts through being bullied. And so that was my story. At 13 years old, I'd already gone through 5 years of being relentlessly bullied, sitting at the lunch table by myself, not being welcome at other tables, getting pelted in the back of the head with chocolate milk spitwads or other pieces of food or fist as kids walked by. I remember getting, beat up in the locker room. I was in 8th grade, 7th grade, and was in the football locker room, just sitting there, got hit in the back of the head with a football helmet. Didn't even see it coming, just got blindsided by it, cheap shot. Had my clothes from the locker room while I'm in the showers, all my clothes thrown out into the auditorium or the gym, the volleyball girls. And, I'm 12 years old, heavy set kid, and all my clothes are in with the girls volleyball team. And I don't have anything to cover up with. And so then other times publicly ridiculed. I'll give you one story, Mike, real quick. But my middle school crush wanted to catch her attention. Biggest crush I'd ever had. And so I found out she was having a birthday party. I got the invitation to it, and it was a costume contest. The winner was going to get a prize. And so on it said the prize was a Dr. Pepper gumball machine. So Dallas, Fort Worth, Dr. Pepper's a big thing. And I found out other people were going as Batman, Superman, all these different things, or characters. I probably should have gone as Thor, being a Viking-looking guy. But I found out she loved Transformers, and her favorite Transformer was Optimus Prime.
Love him.
So I decided I would go as Dr. Optimus Pepper to her birthday party. So her dad worked at Dr. Pepper. She loved Transformers. There was a Dr.
That a big
Pepper
factory there?
Yeah, down there, Dallas, Fort Worth. That's where her dad worked. And that's why the prize was a Dr. Pepper gumball machine, because he worked there. So anyways, from head to toe, I lived in a little country town, Crowley, Texas. And my mom with some duct tape and me with some cardboard boxes of DP, Dr. Pepper, we made myself into Dr. Optimus Pepper, head to toe. 24-pack on the head, 12-packs on the arm, chest plate, I had a shield and a sword. Went to the party. My mom said, man, she's going to love this. Get to her party. Her grandmother, Mimi, opened the door. Mimi goes, oh my gosh, Jennifer's going to love this. She was surprised, but Jennifer's going to love this. Walk in. The rumors at school were true. I get to just push the button. I didn't have to pay for it, and a Dr. Pepper pops out. They had this in their living room. I go to the backyard, open the door, and I'm met by all my peers. And I get hit with a couple flashes of light, and my eyes adjust. I hear the sound of laughter, and I look out, and not one of my classmates are dressed up. Yeah. It was just me. And then I hear my middle school crush me saying, I can't believe you thought you were good enough to come to my party. Mm-hmm. Next to her, Tyler said, you're worthless. And next to her, Justin, a guy, said, you should just kill yourself.
Really?
And so it was just a big setup. Not one other kid dressed up, just me, just so that they could publicly ridicule me, shame me. And that's when I started the biggest battle of my life, which was against depression and suicidal ideation. At 13 years old, just like with Raiden right now, being 12 years old, you believe the things people say about you. Mm. You don't have that resilience built up in you yet. And the effects of bullying can last a lifetime unless you have some big life transformation thing happen, a coach come into your life and mentor you, tell you can be great, believe in you. And so, at 13 years old, I started that biggest battle of my life. Probably a few weeks after that, maybe a couple months after that, I found MMA. I was at a It's called Trader's Village. It was like a flea market in Dallas, Fort Worth. And I found a used VHS tape store. And when I was there, I found MMA. And it was UFC, not one was missing. But I think it was like UFC 2 through 9 or 2 through 11. And I spent all my allowance on that. Because when I found it, I looked at these guys, and my first initial thought was, these guys don't get bullied. That was my first thought. And then turn it over, I saw boxing versus wrestling versus kickboxing versus jiu-jitsu versus sumo versus all these things. And so I bought it all, went home with it. I had to hide it from my parents. My parents were real conservative. But I just fed on it. I loved that these guys probably don't get bullied, but I fell in love, truly in love with the chess match of it, combining all the different sports, putting it into one. This is kind of funny. I don't really share this, but when my dad found the used VHS tapes under my bed, he thought it was a stack of porn, but it was just MMA. And yeah, so that's kind of how
porn MMA vids.
Yeah. So yeah, but that's kind of how it all started. How I found MMA was through being bullied, and then figuring out these guys don't get bullied. And so that's whenever I started my martial arts journey and found wrestling and fighting and started pursuing it.
Wow, dude.
But then when you find out, this is interesting, because I understood that too. When I go to boxing, nobody fucks with these guys. But then when you realize in life, these guys who everybody's scared of, who are emotionally and psychologically, they're very kind, they're very loving, and they want to love everybody, and they're easy to take advantage of psychologically, mentally, financially, and stuff. So they get bullied from a different perspective then.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and then from there, at 15, started wrestling. I had 2 Olympic gold medalists as my high school coaches that taught me to visualize. Yeah, Kenny Monday. Yeah, Kenny Monday and Kendall Cross. I don't know if you know Kenny Monday, but he's been my coach for more than 15 years now, since I was 15 to 32.
Yeah. Wow, man.
First African American to win the wrestling Olympic gold medalist, or be an Olympic gold medalist. And
Incredible.
He's been such a guiding light in my life, a coach, a mentor. And he's like that for so many guys. Now he coaches MMA, and he taught me to believe in myself. Because when I first stepped on the wrestling mats, I was completely timid because I had been bullied since I was at least 8, and I'm 15. So I would telegraph everything I was going to do. I would show what I was going to do before I did it. So the guys would know how to defend it because they've wrestled their whole life, or even if they had a year on me, they knew what I was going to do before I did it. And then those guys just started teaching. Not just muscle memory, but really confidence, having confidence in my moves. And then finally it just kind of clicked one day, and I became a state champion, then All-American, then national champion. And then I went to the Olympic Training Center after high school, went straight to the OTC for Greco-Roman wrestling. Started fighting, was the youngest guy on the Ultimate Fighter TV show.
No shit.
Yeah.
Youngest guy?
Yeah, well, for the heavyweights, 21 years old.
Amazing.
19 was when I started fighting professionally, MMA. And a lot of wrestlers are a little older whenever they get into it, but I jumped right into it. And yeah, it's kind of funny. This was before it was all regulated. So it's kind of from the old school guys a little bit, even though I'm only 32 right now. I was at a fight. I was supposed to coach. My opponent, the guy I was cornering had a staph infection. And so I was the one chosen to go to the press release or the press conference and let him know he wasn't going to show up for weigh-ins because he was in the hospital on IVs because his staph infection was so bad on his thigh, Mike. This comes from wrestling, jiu-jitsu a lot, not as much in boxing, the staph infections. But he literally had this huge divot in his thigh. And
People died from that stuff.
Yeah, this got all the way down into his femur bone. The staph got into his femur. So he couldn't fight. The opponent started talking trash, saying that he ended up in the hospital one night early, that he was going to send him there the next night anyways. The promoter came up to me and said, "Hey, you want a chance to shut this guy up?" And I was like, "Man, I'm a wrestler. I'm not a fighter. I don't know how to do this. I just came here to be his wrestling coach." And the guy said, "Hey, if you stand with him, you're going to get knocked out. This guy's a kickboxer. Don't stand with him. Put him on his back and beat him there." And he's talking to me like I'm actually taking the fight. I'm like, "Man, I came here to coach." And he's like, "Hey, I'll give you the opportunity to fight tomorrow night."
Oh, that guy's
co-main event.
He's a real promoter, this guy.
Right?
That guy was.
Yeah.
He got you in a fight.
Yeah, little podunk show in Oklahoma. And
Oh, my
ended up
God.
taking it. And next night, it was about a minute and a half into the fight, and put him on his back and then finished him with ground and pound. Next fight was kind of the same thing. An opponent or a guy I was supposed to coach had a cold. The third fight, I was in Iowa, and I was actually in the stands. and I was 19 years old. I was
Good God.
drinking a beer with a fake ID, and my opponent that night went into the cage, and the promoter said his opponent that weighed in yesterday didn't even show up on the night of the fight. And so they were looking for someone that weighed over 206 pounds. And if there's someone in the stands that wants to fight, just raise your hand. So my friend looks at me and goes, "What are you doing?" I'm wearing like a button-down shirt, jeans, nice shoes, and I kind of raised my hand. And he's like, "What are you doing?" So I literally had to borrow someone else's fight shorts.
What are you
I had
doing?
to borrow someone else's jock and cup, and I had to use a boil and bite mouthpiece, put it in a coffee cup or coffee pot.
Oh my God.
And boil it down. And so those are my first 3 fights.
Wow, dude.
Yeah.
Listen, you know how fortunate you are, aren't you?
Yes.
You know, most guys, they don't finish like you. Normally that's the last 3 fights they have, and they're talking really funny for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
You're very fortunate.
Man, I'm grateful. I'm grateful now that, so you asked about Fight for the Forgotten, and what I've learned is that fighting against people for competition, that's one thing, but it's a completely different thing, fulfilling, for me at least, and that's why it's my life mission and life passion to fight for people. And so getting into that, Mike, I got to go after 5 years of fighting professionally. Man, I ended up being a depressed, drunk drug addict, hooked on Oxy, went missing for 8 weeks. Fighting didn't fulfill me like I thought it would. That childhood dream became a reality, turned into a nightmare. Because I lost all my money, became an addict, and win or lose, I had an excuse to use. And so I went missing for 8 weeks. Like literally, like my parents didn't know where I was, best friend didn't know where I was, family, girlfriend, no one knew where I was. And I was hitchhiking from drug house to drug house in Colorado. Man, so deep into Oxycontin. And my best friend left me a voicemail saying, "I can't believe you missed my wedding. I can't believe my best man didn't show up." And so I was that hooked on the opioids, and almost took my life from that. And then from there, that kind of scared me sober. Went back to my fight team. They voted me off. It was 34-1. And that was like some of the best fighters in the world. Shane Carwin, Brendan Schaub, Nate Marquardt, Dwayne Bang Ludwig, Rashad Evans, some big name guys voted me off the fight team. And so that was kind of rock bottom for me. That nightmare was even being taken away from me, which was just my identity, was being a fighter. And so then I started volunteering at different things, and by happenstance, I ended up living 11 months later after being a bit sober, and big life change. Ended up in the Congo, living in the rainforest with the pygmy people, the hunter-gatherers, and got adopted in as family with them.
Wait a minute, dude.
Yeah.
How did you just end up there?
Yeah, I was gonna say, how did the encounter happen? The encounter with you and the pygmy.
Okay, well, I do want to talk about Stand with Raiden, but I got to share this then.
Yeah, we got plenty of
Matthew.
time, dude.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
go tell us. I mean, this is fascinating. So, how did you? I end up in the Congo, meet the pygmies, get adopted into the family.
Yeah, it was wild.
How did you get to the Congo? What was it that? Did you buy a plane ticket and said, "I'm going to the Congo," or like, how did that come about?
I did that, but it was something absolutely wild that got me up to that point.
What was it?
I've been a little timid to share it out there publicly because I know it sounds wild. It's
Say
kinda
it, brother.
crazy.
If you can say it,
okay,
say
well,
it.
So 11 months. Mike, you probably did visualization, right? A lot of
Every day of
visualization.
my life.
Every day of your life.
Every day.
Okay.
Yesterday, today, this morning, right before I come here.
Okay.
Sometimes
well,
during the day here, I would do it.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, so before I'd go wrestle, we had sports psychologists at the Olympic Training Center that would take you through visualization drills, like see what color singlet you're wearing, your wrestling uniform. Is it red or is it blue? The two colors that they allow at the Olympic level. See yourself shaking hands with your opponent. You walking out on the mat. What's the sounds? What's the smells? You know, what's your game plan? How are you setting that up? What's your first tie up and your first setup to your first takedown? Okay, he got the takedown. How do you reverse it? And you see this in your mind 100 times before you ever go do it or more.
Yeah.
Well, this was unlike anything I'd visualized because I wasn't coached into it. All of a sudden, it just happened. And I was 11 months into this kind of life change. I had stopped fighting, and I thought I was going to stop fighting for a year. Well, this was 11 months in, and so I started looking for a fight again. Man, all I did was I said this quick, simple sort of prayer where I said, God, what do you want me to do with my life? That's all I said. And man, I had a movie in my mind that I didn't try to conjure up. I didn't try to fabricate. All of a sudden, I was taken to the forest, and I was walking down this footpath, and then all of a sudden I heard drumming, and I keep walking down this footpath in the forest, and I clear like thickets out of the way, and then I hear singing, a very distinct kind of almost yodeling type singing, and then I come into this clearing, and I meet a guy, or I see him, and I see his ribs kind of poking out, and he's coughing, and I knew that he's sick, and my eyes just adjust. I see these twig and leaf huts. And then I just was flooded with this knowledge of who these people were, that they were hungry and thirsty and poor and sick, oppressed. And I knew that they were enslaved, that they called someone else master. And then I felt that they felt forgotten. That's all I knew was forgotten. I grabbed this piece of paper and I write forgotten on the top of it. And hungry, poor, sick, oppressed, thirsty, enslaved. And before I ever wrote that, I just came out of that vision just crying, unlike I've ever cried in my life, for these people that I don't know. I don't know who they are, where they are, but I left a little, like that much of tears. You can't call that a puddle, but I mean, a pretty big size of tears. I just was crying, didn't know these people, but my heart, all I can say was my heart was like shattered for them. Emotionally, I was wrecked, and I had no idea why, who they were. And for 3 days, I felt crazy because it had been 11 months since I had tried any psychedelics. I tried to conjure this up. I wasn't in a visualization drill with a sports psychologist. All of a sudden, I was just lit up with this vision. I felt nuts for 3 days. Couldn't tell anybody. And 3 days later, this guy named Caleb, who had put on like survival trainings around the world, like survivalist stuff. And he was friends with Bear Grylls, like the Man vs. Wild guy. And he was a humanitarian, missionary type guy. And I met Caleb, and I'm like, man, this might be the guy I could tell. He's kind of a crazy guy. And so I tell Caleb, and he gets kind of perked up. And he goes, I know who they are. And I said, what? And he goes, those are the pygmy people. And I said, who? And he goes, they're in the Congo. And I was like, where? I hadn't been to the Congo. I had never heard of the pygmy people at this time. And he goes, it's so crazy because I'm supposed to go see them in 3.5 weeks from now, just over 3 weeks from now. He goes, but the team I was taking of men, the 3 guys with them were all husbands and all fathers, and they canceled their trip because the rebels had taken over the airport that they were flying into. Over a 1 million person city had been overtaken by rebels. He's like, the State Department said no American for any reason should travel to the Congo. And so he goes, look, my wife was telling me I should cancel my trip unless I get some sort of sign that I'm supposed to go. He goes, look, man, if you go, I'll go. And I was like, what? No. Well, first I told him no, because it was crazy. It was too out there. Like, it's dangerous. I don't know who these people are, where they are. And so anyways, 3.5 weeks later, I tell Caleb, and I told a guy named Colin. And 3.5 weeks later, we're taking numerous planes there. We land on a runway that literally they cleared with machetes. That was how they mowed the lawn there. Monkeys are jumping off the runway. We land, we get on a truck, we drive like 6 hours. We get out, we get on a motorcycle for a couple hours. We ride across a canoe. Then all of a sudden we're hiking, and we're hiking in, and all of a sudden we hear drumming. And then we hear singing. Then we come into a clearing, and the first guy we meet has tuberculosis. And his ribs are showing, and he's coughing, and he's coughing. All the way down to the fact that Caleb and Colin were grabbing me saying, this is your vision. Yeah. Bro, this is your vision. Yeah. And I felt like, this is nuts. Yeah. Did I have some sort of mental break or mental lapse? Like, what's going on with me? But even the chief pulled us to the side and said, hey, everyone else calls us the forest people. We call ourselves the forgotten. And when he said forgotten, that was what I had written at the top of that piece of paper was forgotten on the vision. And so I known then that, like, for some reason, for some purpose, like, I felt like I was brought there. But I doubted it for quite a while, because coming back the first time, kind of the visual I had was I could try to help these people that have such significant suffering I could spend my whole life trying. And the visual I got was that it was like emptying the ocean with an eyedropper. And like, how long is that going to take? And if I spent my whole life doing it, would it really make an impact? But man, it's been wild. Like Mike, I've had a little boy named Andy Bo pass away. I was cupping the back of his head and holding his little hand, and he passed away just because of water, dirty water.
Dirty water infection.
Dirty water. So, and his mom was sitting there with me.
Or was it malaria?
No, it was just a waterborne disease. I've had malaria now 3 times.
What is that like?
Malaria? Oh, bro, it's brutal. First time I had it, I vomited red and green, so it was blood and bile. After like 4 or 5 days, I lost 33 pounds in 5 days. 60 to 70% or 65 to 70% of my bloodstream were parasites. And so my kidneys were failing, my liver was failing, my veins were collapsing. They couldn't get IVs in me. And then I had black water fever, which is a side effect of malaria. 25 to 50% of the people that get black water fever, they die. So I was one of the few lucky ones. And but whenever I finally was able to urinate, it was pitch black. That's why black water fever. It was like motor oil or something. But I couldn't urinate for 5 full days. And then whenever I did, it was that color. So it was brutal. The joint pain, unlike anything you can imagine, your neck, your shoulders, your elbows, your wrists, joints, like just radiating pain. And you feel like if we were in this room right now, it would feel like we were on a ship that was like 8, 10, 12-foot waves on a boat. Like you're just rocking, and your fever goes way up for a short time, maybe 30 minutes or an hour, and then it plummets and goes to where you're freezing. So actually, when your fever's up, that's when you're cold. And then whenever your fever plummets to like 96, that's whenever you're hot. You're just overheating. And so malaria was brutal the 3 times I had it. First time almost killed me. The second, third time weren't as bad. But yeah, I've had amoebas, intestinal parasites, and a bunch of different stuff. But hey, this is stuff they deal with on a daily basis.
Wow.
Like I've had it, but they are losing loved ones to it. And so since then, Fight for the Forgotten, we've been able to get back their land rights, over 3,000 acres of land for the Pygmy people.
Amazing.
And we're helping them drill wells. So we've drilled 61 water wells for them, and then started up 4 working farms. So 3 are fully sustainable that are supplying different things like corn, beans, rice, bananas to the local markets. And then whenever they're able to sell that, first they're able to eat it for themselves. Then they're able to sell it for others to eat. And then from that, they make money to where they can pay school fees or buy school uniforms so their kids can go to school for the first time. But yeah, I got to live in the twig and leaf huts with them for over a year. So I've been doing this since 2011. And one time I went for a full year, and the other times I go for maybe a month or 2 months or 3 weeks. And what we really try to do is just to empower the locals, because they're the ones that want to be the change they want to see in the world or in their community or in their country. And the thing is that I've learned real quick is there's a great book called When Helping Hurts. You can try to help, but in the long run, you can hurt if you don't do it in appropriate, sustainable ways. And so, for instance, in just water wells, if you look at that, there's over 230,000 broken wells in Africa right now. Over 230,000 broken wells that are minimum $5,000 each. And so it's billions of wasted charitable dollars. And the reason it's wasted is because the locals weren't educated with the knowledge how to do it for themselves. They weren't equipped with the tools to be able to do it for themselves. And they weren't empowered with like a self-sustaining business in country. They have to depend on the outsiders to do it for them. And so if a well breaks down after 11 months, which they normally do, you have to really have the locals, like changing oil after 3,000 miles. You have to be able to maintenance the well. It might just be a small nuts and bolts kind of quick fix. But if they don't know how to fix it, then it's never going to be fixed.